Kia ora everyone, thanks for taking the time to come along today. I'm sure we'll make it worth your while. We've got some really interesting pieces of research here. So today, 2 people-centred frameworks to allow you to better connect with people inside and outside of your organisation, your consumers and customers, your family, your friends, your neighbours, strangers, and also to better connect with yourself, because as you go through this process and see how New Zealanders define what a good life is, you'll also see that you define it in a similar way. And knowing that might make you change what you do in your everyday life. Beyond that, it's also about creating more sustainable organisations. So from our Better Futures work, we know that people are concerned about climate change, plastics, the environment in general, the cost of living. That's why that overarching narrative around being more sustainable is important. So we've got 2 frameworks. The first of them is around happiness. It's our kind of classical direct questioning approach where we asked people, showed them a list of 25 factors and said, which of these make you happy? Then we clustered them into groups to see where they fit in terms of those different factors. The second was a guided listening approach where we asked people to tell us what the good life is for them. So just like you to take a moment just to get comfortable in your seat and close your eyes, or if closing your eyes is not comfortable for you, just keep them open. I want you to think about all the things that you've done in the last week. And while you think about that week, I'd like you to pick out a moment which was a particular highlight for you. What were you doing? Who was with you? What was the mood like in that moment? How did you feel? What were the energy levels like? Was it an active, high energy moment, or was it a quiet, relaxing moment? I mean, if you had to take a picture of that moment to share with me, what would that picture look like? And finally, are you having more or less of these moments in your life compared to a few years ago? So just slowly come back into the room. Hands up if you had a moment which was with other people. Fantastic. Hands up if the moment was a quiet, relaxed moment. Excellent. So in essence, that's what we did with people, except instead of sending me out to do a projective technique with 600 people, we asked them to use their phone to take a picture of a highlight of their day. 4 of them, we said, could you share 4 of them over a couple of weeks? As the moment comes up in your everyday, take a picture and then upload it and fill out a little survey, just explaining what the moment was, describing it. We asked some questions about mood, how you were feeling, whether you're having more of these moments in your life or less of these moments in your life, whether it was a moment where you had to spend a lot of money, whether it was a moment which had a positive impact on the community or a negative one, positive impact on the environment or a negative one. And that's obviously self-perception. And we collected all that information to create these moments which are the moments of a good life. So we have a very rich and data set of moments. I suppose the key question is, do you think a business, if they understood your key moments from your lives, whether they would be able to better connect with you if they knew what mattered to you? I think for me, that definitely, if they knew what was important in my life, they would be able to connect with me a lot better, especially if they were present in that moment and doing so in a sustainable way. Do you think this goes beyond just comms and marketing? Do you think it also could have an effect? Knowing those moments that matter to people could have an effect on innovation, HR, the way you deal with stakeholders, the organisational strategy. Do you think understanding how people define a good life would impact on those things? Because I think when we originally started on this process, we were thinking comms, but as we got more and more into it, and with the help of some of our, we in the process, we did pioneer groups. So we shared the early results with people and they told us what they thought of it. And it was clear that it wasn't just about comms, it was broader than that. It could impact across the organisation. And let's be honest, in 2 decades of research, I can count on one hand the number of projects where the research was not looking at the world through a category lens, through a brand lens, through a comms lens, and actually took a step back and just said, what matters to you, people? So in a broader sense, it's really about understanding what gets people out of bed in the morning, so that kind of happiness stuff, and what are the moments that matter in their life. So I think it's a really important piece of research and something that would be great to do more of. The other thing where it's important is that in times of change where predicting the future is very uncertain, and it's kind of a blend of art and science, so you're looking at trends and trying to work out where your organisation's going to go with those trends. If we put people's kind of core needs at the centre of our businesses, and we're delivering to those core needs in a sustainable way, do you think we'll be better placed for the future? Do you think organisations that deliver to those moments in a sustainable way are going to be around in 20, 30, 50 years' time? I think the challenge with this will be integrating the frameworks into your businesses, because for many of you, the implementation barriers will be too great, and this will go in the too hard basket, and it'll be like, no, that's just, we can't do that. So I think, to some extent, I think this document would be more useful for startup entrepreneurs, younger people who want to have a sustainable future and want to build a career with organisations that will be around in 50 years' time. And maybe this is less appropriate for larger organisations. I suppose that's the challenge for you, to take this and use it within your organisations. Before we get into the good stuff, just a few key points about the research approach. First of all, we set quotas on age, gender, household, income and ethnicity. Our research was inspired by a similar project in the US, but they just used social media to work out what the key moments were in people's lives. And we didn't think that that was appropriate in New Zealand because a lot of people actually aren't on social media or participating in social media, so posting moments from their lives in a kind of public domain. So we really wanted to have a representative view of everybody. Second, just to avoid the situation, so they weren't uploading 4 photo diaries of their children or their cats or each day at the gym. We guided people just to upload different kinds of moments, so moments where you were with others or moments when you were by yourself, just so that we got a good range of different kind of good life moments. Third, at no point did we mention sustainability, so our intention all along was to capture a broad sweep of what a good life means, and then from that work out where sustainability sits. So there was at no point did we say, show us your sustainable moments. We didn't want 1,886 photos of people recycling. That would have been a bit of a dull presentation. And by deliberately going down this path of, so using our Colmar-Brunton research panel to recruit people to participate in the research, we really get a window into a life that is probably hidden in that social media framework. So when we recruited people to take part, we asked them whether we didn't want to lose people in the process. We didn't want them to say, I'm not taking part in this because I don't want my photos to end up on One News or something like that. So we said to them, we want you to participate. We'll keep your photos hidden if you want, or we'll use them in our documents if you want. And so 45% of people said, yep, we're going to share our moments and you can share them with whoever's using the playbook. 55% said no. So for those 55%, we're probably not seeing them in social media and getting a feel for what matters to them, because they're taking their privacy more seriously and not sharing those kinds of moments. So we're getting a view into a hidden world. And people really shared a rich set of meaningful highlights. This is the first time we've done this kind of approach, so we didn't really know what people might share. We thought it could be lots of screenshots of a funny meme off Twitter or something like that, but actually they shared a really rich and meaningful highlights from their life. So my first reaction after going through all 886 photo diaries was, wow, these moments are really different from what I would normally see in social media feeds, from how the media reflects what matters or what reflects the New Zealand population. And I felt that these were the kind of people that I could like. It was quite humbling and a real privilege to see all these moments and to be able to analyse them, because they were contextually rich, they were very meaningful, they were real, they were intimate, and they definitely exceeded my kind of expectations around what we were expecting. But I think that reflects the role moments play in the way that we connect with each other on an everyday basis. So when I go into work on Monday, Kate says, "How was your weekend?" And I tell her what the highlights were of the weekend, and she tells me back her highlights. And as our relationship has developed, we also share lowlights from our life as well. So I think we're very naturally used to sharing our highlights, and I think that's reflected in why people were very happy to share their special moments as well. I'm just going to show you just a selection of some of the things that were shared with us. So this was a moment of a community event. I'll let you read that yourself. But so we had men of all ages sharing their meaningful moments. I think sometimes it's difficult for men to open up, but really through this process, they really shared real and heartfelt moments across their diaries. We had moments of reflection and contemplation. Some of the best Māori images we can't share because they weren't more likely to want to keep their photos to the project team, but some of their best images were from people who didn't want to share them. So there were lots of photos with around food, so kai moana, crayfish, fish, where they've gone out shellfish and collected it and brought it back, sharing it with the family. There's lots of shared moments with whānau. So we've got a really good representation of Māori in these moments. Some really rich, meaningful stories about people overcoming obstacles. So lots of ones like this where people have had just health problems or other problems in their life, and they're sharing how those moments, well, how those difficulties have reflected in how they're living their life now, which is really interesting. We also had people sharing moments where they were not so happy. So they were depressed, had no money, but they were taking a selfie of themselves in a park and saying, "Yeah, it's a nice sunny day, and here's me smiling." So there were moments like that as well, which people were happy to share. And lots of moments from our Chinese and Indian communities as well. So many of which their moments are about being together with family, broader community events. So just hope that gives you a flavour for kind of what we collected. So what is a good life? A good life is mostly about experiences. When we started the process, we thought that we might have to chuck out half of our diary moments because people were going to it's going to be blatantly consumption moments, but they were really rare. I think it was like 5 or 6% of moments involved a buying something element to them. So for those of you who are currently delivering experiences, this is great. For those of you who aren't, you can still think about where in the process you are delivering experiences, and think about where your products fit in these moments, which are experiential moments, and how they support that. In the moments where we did spend money, those moments were fundamentally about bringing people together, or they were about exploring the world. And when we look at the moments, so once we formed the 16 moments and looked at kind of what was sitting below them, there were two fundamental dimensions below them. The first one captures whether you're alone, whether you're with a larger group or a community. So I think this kind of reflects that. So the moment where you're alone reading your Kindle, the moment where you're spending time with a few close people to you, and the kind of more community events. So that's one of the dimensions that underlies the moments. The second dimension is really around the amount of energy you're expending in the moment. So whether that's just not just physical energy, but also mental effort in the moment. So you can see here we've got quiet moments. So someone having fish and chips and a cider at the end of a week, and energetic moments. So hitting the gym. Yeah, lots of cats and dogs and not so many sheep, but there were some sheep in there. Pets are important to people. I think it was 6 or 7% of the moments had a pet in them. Some of those moments were just hanging out at home. Some of the moments were being active with my pet. Yeah, pets are important. I suppose there's one thing that I haven't included in here, which was around the environment. So that was another core element that came through, was that there were lots of moments where people were reflecting on the world around them, the natural environment around them. So lots of photos of mountains and sunsets and native wildlife and flowers in my garden and trees and ocean. And so New Zealanders really have a strong relationship with the land, and they use it to seek solace, but also to inspire them. And the environment, accessing the environment is largely free, so that's a good thing as well. I think this links back to those core concerns that people talked about in Better Futures around the environment. We value our natural world. So if you damage that, be prepared for your reputation to take a knock. Be prepared to respond. Show people that you share their concerns and you're working towards addressing these issues. This slide is just to talk about the process. So we didn't just get the 1,800 moments and print them out and throw them into piles. We actually used the data behind it, so how people explained the moments, to group them together. And in that process of grouping, we wanted to make sure that the moments were large enough that they weren't very niche, and we wanted them to be really sharp and their definition to be very clear. So that's kind of just the statsy process. Don't need to dwell on this. So here's the good life. We have 4 quadrants. So low energy, high energy, individual, social. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up here, 2 here, a lot down here, 3 up there. In terms of how they fell out across the groups, so Q1, 20%, 27% of moments fell out in Q1. So this is our high energy social moments. 12% fell out here, which is our low energy social moments. 23% fell out here, our individual high energy moments. And the biggest chunk was down here. So 39% was our low energy individual moments. I'll just talk through some of these moments. So they're fairly self-explanatory, and in the playbook there's lots of information about each one. Connecting with my community is, as it suggests, it's me getting out there in my community, going to community events, hanging out with my people in the community. Whānau United is more about large groups, so your family groups getting together after time apart, because we do live in different locations and we don't connect as much as we did maybe 50 years ago. So that's whānau united. A full table is similar to whānau united, but it's a bit smaller group, and it's really focused on food as kind of the key element of that occasion. Achieving my goals is a bit more work oriented, so that's where you, as it suggests, it's moments where you're really achieving your goals. Being together is more a smaller family unit, so it's typically parents with children doing things together, going hiking together, and that's being together. And we've got being active, which is kind of for younger people, that's gym. For older people, it's going for a hike, exploring new places, which is that whole travel thing. So that can be overseas or local. Maintaining our home. So there's lots of people who are very proud of the fact that they installed a cat flap in their door or painted their house. That tends to be a more male occasion, that one. But yeah, there's lots of proud photos of people in there. Being with friends, that's a bit more intimate, kind of 4 or 5 people catching up for dinner or going for a beer. Celebrating our children, lots of moments where parents and grandparents showed moments where Johnny's learned to ride a bike, Susie's graduated from university, that kind of stuff. So really moments where people were proud about what their children are achieving. And then we had these low energy individual moments. So appreciating nature, loving our pets, creating and growing. That one's about, so it's kind of hobby things. So where you're doing knitting, there's someone there that uploaded a photo of a great cake. They've learnt how to make cakes. Nourishing my household is about, feeding my family and kind of the ritual that goes with that. Taking a break is pretty self-explanatory. You've finished maintaining your home, so you need to sit down and relax. Me time is kind of that thing where you've got an hour or two to yourself where you can do what you like read the Kindle. So those are our 16 good life moments. This is one of the moments, so being active. So we've got a lot of information around what being active is, getting out and moving. So here we've got some photos that people uploaded and the descriptions that they had for each of those. We have the moment share, so how out of our 1,886, how many moments fell into this, how often they happen. Momentum is that question of more or less. And we've got the average there as compared to the average of all of the moments, what you were doing, who you were with, how you felt, what the mood was like, how much you spent. This is based on a 7-point scale. There's a glossary in there that explains a lot of these measures, environmental impact, community impact. So we've got a lot of rich information around each moment. Happiness. We included happiness mainly because we wanted to be able to link kind of that broader thing around what makes us happy to the good life moments and see whether there were links. What makes us happy for all of our groups, having a supportive partner, being a supportive partner, spending time with my family, those are important across all the groups, we had, for family first, that's to the detriment of everything else, so it's all about family to them, everything else is less important. These are the things that are less important in people's lives, so buy myself the newest and latest things, driving the car I want, being involved in my community. There is a group that community aspect is really important for though. So this is the slide where we look at the overlap, and it's very complicated, and I'm going to talk through an example. If we just focus on the adventure seekers, so in Playbook page 11, adventure seekers are more likely to want new experiences, travel to new places and countries. They're 15% of people. They're skewed to higher incomes, younger ages. They're very satisfied with the amount of time they're spending outdoors, but they're more dissatisfied with the amount of travel that they are doing. So that's a pain point for them. If we look at the matrix for them, I'll take this over. Look at the matrix for adventure seekers. We can see here that they're a bit higher in terms of being active and exploring new places. That's good. You'd want to see that, but that only represents actually 20% of their moments that they shared with us. There's another 80% which are common with with everyone else. And I suppose that's the key learning here. While we have moments that we skew towards more, we have so much more in common in terms of how we define the good life. And if we connect through these moments, you're actually connecting with more people, a broader reach of people. Your messages are resonating more powerfully. And if your organisation aims for some of these moments, if your organisation owns some of these moments, you're already in a powerful position for the future. And if you're delivering in a sustainable way to some of these moments, then you're going to have longevity. So just to summarise, from this process, we know what the good life means to New Zealanders. Experience is key to that. And I think people are a bit more complicated than we give them credit for. While we have, it's nice to stereotype, our definition of the good life is a lot more shared than we expected. Now, question time.
Thank you so much, Grant and Alison. If I can get you to come and sit in the seats. So this is your opportunity to think about what you've heard from Alison and Grant, and think about what questions you would like to ask them. And I'm wondering if I can kick off by saying, so Grant, if you had to summarise, say, the 2 or 3 key surprises, the takeaways for you from this research, and what you think are the most crucial things for the crowd here to know and take away themselves, what would they be?
I think the first one is experience is really important. I think that's the key to connecting to people. And even if you're not delivering an experience, you can still see how your brand delivers to that. Most of those moments are sustainable. I think when we entered the process, as I said, I thought we were going to chuck out lots of them that were clearly consumptive, but they were rare. I mean, I remember there was one image where someone had shared that they'd purchased a $30,000 Louis Vuitton bag for their mother's birthday. And after going through 1,800 photos of normal people's not the right word, but to strike that one, it was like, whoa. I stood up and had to go for a little walk around, like, wow. But so the moments are very sustainable. People do or can be interpreted in sustainable ways. Mm-hmm. I think that's the second point. The third point is just around how shared our vision of the good life is.
Right.
And there are some skews in there, but in general, we do all have a kind of, we can all see ourselves in those moments. I don't think there's any, I'd be interesting to get your feedback. I don't think there's anything really big missing there. It was funny as well that people weren't sharing moments of them watching Netflix or, because we spend a lot of our time doing those things. And the first thing after doing this project was I removed all my social media apps. So just because, why am I doing that?
And it let you have more moments in your day that you wanted.
Yeah, I was achieving my goals, getting this project over the line. And
So, Alison, for you, what were the key aha moments for you?
I think for me, just to see in that size up there, but in red, green, mm-hmm. orange, just the mix of different moments people experience, just to put a very, very clear picture on how much we assume about people. Mm. And thinking of how many people we are missing when we talk to them or they experience our brand, and how much we might be alienating people through that. I just thought of all the opportunities lost mm-hmm. through that. So I was really struck that we just had something in front of us that we could see where there's other opportunities are open if you're open to this information. Mm-hmm. I think another thing that really struck me was that compared to the US market, the one we did here for the New Zealand market really felt just right for here. There's a lot of people here have used the US one and it's really useful in a lot of ways, but there's just some things culturally here and some attitudes here that some of that US information just didn't work for. So it was really good to see that we can really pinpoint some of the cultural aspects here. And I think the other main thing was just how the different kinds of ways that people see living well, fulfilling life, what it looks and feels like, didn't have a lot of purchasing moments in it. Yet we know people still buy things, but what they're enjoying and the experiences they have are around other kinds of things in life.
So that connection between consumption and what that consumption can do for delivering on the experiences and the good life desirables that people have. So it's their enablers too. They're not the end point in themselves. It's about those purchases enabling the kinds of experiences and moments that people are looking for, meaningful moments. Okay, great. Right. Audience.
I have a question from the live stream, which is from Ryan Jennings of Buy NZ. He asks, as part of the Playbook research, do you have a good life split between employees, business owners, and non-employed/retired?
Potentially. No, I say that because we recruited from our panel. We have there's a lot of information that we didn't ask in the survey that we know about people as well, so we could delve into that. Yeah.
Other questions?
This is maybe more a clarification, but at some point, Grant, in the beginning, you were saying you felt that this was more suitable for perhaps start-up businesses than large established businesses?
Just because it's easier.
What's easier?
Implementing, if you're starting from zero, building something to deliver to certain moments, because it's balancing the current business and how you want it to be in the future is really tough. And if your numbers are looking good...
I might be being contentious, but everything that we've seen from the US playbook, from the Edelman Earn brand, from Better Futures, is that human beings, whether they're consumers or employees, are actually saying, we expect business to lead on social change, being environmental and social.
Yes.
So as a responsible CEO, have I got a choice?
No.
Chris Abbott from Vodafone had a really interesting take on this yesterday, and if I could maybe answer with a bit of his perspective, because I think it goes to exactly the point that you're making. And he was talking about Vodafone's need to invest in new infrastructure and new infrastructure assets, but in a world where consumers have moved on from wanting a new phone every year and being prepared to pay for it. And the way that Vodafone has traditionally paid for its infrastructure is because we all buy new phones. When we don't, the return on the infrastructure investment becomes a lot longer in its horizon. And that means that there need to be new conversations happening at the board table and at a governance level in businesses, and that actually business investors and shareholding investors need to be mindful of what we're talking about here, that actually the way that people are expressing their good life and consumption in that context means that the way we expect returns on investment needs to change. And that's going to be and I think to Grant's point, on the surface, that feels like something that's a lot more difficult for established, more mature businesses who are used to ROIs with very short horizons. And, all of us who've worked in big organisations understand the tension where your board's saying, well, where are we up to against plan? And we have a P&L and we have expectations, et cetera, and we need to pay a dividend. And yet what this is telling us is that actually consumption is kind of not matching that in a way that's going to keep delivering in that mindset. And his argument at the end, which I'm taking a long time to get around to, is that capital markets are going to need to change the way they behave and change their expectations.
So I agree. I mean, I was being contentious for a reason, but I just spent 2 weeks touring with a UK speaker who's on the board of Danone globally, who is halfway to being the world's first fully sustainable multinational B Corp, and 12-year plan, doing it by country. And Unilever are on a 20-year plan. So all I'm saying is it just requires, as you say, it requires larger vision to involve investors and stakeholders and say, we cannot shift 70,000 SKUs from here to here,
Yes.
but my option I guess, frankly, is you ain't got a choice.
You haven't got a choice.
And leadership is a choice.
That's right. That's right.
I'll shut up now.
and that's actually about the taking what this is showing us and what this research is demonstrating and saying, what does that mean for being a sustainable business? And I guess that's one of the big outtakes that I've taken from the research, is that those organisations who understand the way that consumer preference and the way that people are living their lives is evolving, those organisations that understand that and actually go out to meet that and respond to it will actually be far more sustainable in the long term than those who don't. Any other questions? Yes, Kat.
I think at the beginning I was interested in one of the comments around sort of the disconnect between what people view as being what makes them happy and actually what intuitively they know to be kind of those fulfilling, intrinsically good moments. And I wonder how much really that comes down to sort of the messages that we've all received over the years around buy more, you've got to do this, you've got to achieve that, whereas actually all of us feel like we're kind of failing in some way because we're not doing that. And then actually there's still that real intuitive knowing of what is bringing us any sort of sense of happiness. And so was there kind of in your thinking, or will this research think about where those messages are coming through brands really effectively that are actually tapping into this, beyond the consumption part, that are actually tapping into these moments, if you like? Is that kind of, was there things that came up that you thought there are brands doing that well now, or is it still very much that there's a sense that that's really kind of not happening still?
I just want to, with your first point there, it was definitely interesting to see how much we tend to, in our own minds, think of a happy life equals a good life. And it's something we kind of just all do. And then when you start to think about it, they're not necessarily the same. And those big goals that we have about this will make me happy, the more you think about it, the more you think, actually, that's completely different to that hour. That hour I spent with a friend was a highlight. And what does happiness mean? And that's culturally, I think that means something different for every nation as well. In terms of brands who are doing things well, I'm not going to roll out some names, but I think the ones that I see that are doing this well is where they are quite nimble in how they approach their marketing, and the people that are representing the brand tend to, you can get a sense that they're sharing the values and purpose of that brand themselves. So the face of it, as in the literal people, can tend to do that well because they've worked within their internal culture and their communications about how people are seeing them, and they're taking more time to get to know people. So that can be some more consumer-facing businesses where there's things on a shelf, but it's also, there's quite a lot of B2B interactions that I think do that well. So there's a lot of opportunities for business-to-business interactions to include those kinds of experiences too.
And Kat, we might save that question for the panel as well. No pressure. Grant, did you want to comment on that?
Oh no, I think there's a lot of people have in business leadership positions really want to be doing more of this, and whether we're seeing that in the media reflected in advertising comms activities, I'm not sure yet, but I think there's definitely building intention. People want to do more of this. This will talk about being more human and things like that. So yeah.